Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, everybody. I hope you have had a lovely week. Um, to those who celebrate Passover or Easter, I hope the holiday preparations and festivities are everything you want them to be. And welcome. All right. Today is going to be a big today is a big show. So, earlier this week, the Supreme Court um, issued their decision regarding this Colorado conversion therapy law. And I started seeing headlines, and then the H in ADHD was activated, and I started going down rabbit holes. And this afternoon, you get to come along on that rabbit hole with me because there are some things that are a bit confusing, it seems, in the reporting. And so, if you're freaking out about this decision, first let me start with it is not as bad as you think it is. If you are celebrating this decision, first of all, I have a lot of questions for you, and also have a few folks that I want to introduce you to so that maybe you can change your views. Secondly, it's not as good as you think it is. So, I'm going to do a deep dive. I've got the decisions pulled up. I am not going to read all 66 pages, but we are going to read through some things and we're going to take a look at some things and I'm going to compare it a little bit to another case, interestingly, also out of Colorado, that also got some reporting about it that I was kind of in the minority amongst my friends on that one. So, disclaimers. I am not a lawyer. I have not gone to law school. I'm not a paralegal. I am not a legal assistant. I am merely law adjacent and I am a law nerd. So, when I learn certain things from actual lawyers, some of them stick in my head and then I pay closer attention with other things. So, um, first, I'm going to roll the intro. As I do that, let me know where you're coming in from, what you're sipping on this afternoon. Are you snacking on jelly beans? Did you get the good jelly beans? These are the real questions of the day, right? I am having some coffee because it's that late afternoon coffee time for me. So I am sipping on some coffee. When after the intro rolls, when I come back, I am going to do a brief little rundown of the headlines that there's always huge headlines. So there's always things on my radar. So I'm going to run through the highlights, I guess. Highlights feels such a wrong word in this regime. I don't know. We need a different word than highlights. But so we're going to run through those and then we're going to dive right in to the Supreme Court decision. We're going to break down a few things. And hopefully, if you're panicking, this will make you feel a little bit better. And now I'm buffering in real time. So let me just go ahead and roll the intro and then we'll get right into it. Welcome to Bark-a-Lot with the Aurora H. White. I'm a legal biller by trade, opinionated law and politics nerd by default. I'm here to break down the political, pop culture, and court headlines that we're all talking about. We value facts, thoughtful discussion, and salty language, so whether you're a fellow law nerd, a political junkie, or just looking for a little hope in today's crazy world, you're in the right place. Tap that subscribe button, pull up your soapbox, and let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. All right. So, because I do this show on Saturday, there's always insanity that pops off right before I'm going to do my show. It's become tradition now. I'm embracing it. I should put it on merch at some point if I can think of the best thing to happen. had a word. Anyway, I can see there's some flashing on the stream as well. I've rebooted everything. I'm just gonna live with it for right now. Um, but yeah, late Friday news as of today, it seems like Trump is maybe just missing temporarily. He goes into hiding every so often. It's I don't know. The my internet world is watching closely. Maybe we'll check before I leave to see if there's anything else up there. What happened this week? Bondi got fired. Shocker. Right before she's going to testify in front of the oversight committee regarding the Epstein files. I Anybody with me on this one? I would like Bondi to just start singing like a canary. Just mention it all. Mention it all. Mention it all. Um, Hegseth fired another general that doesn't seem to be complying the way he wants. Okay. I don't know a lot about military structure, but it feels like this is going to happen a lot, and I don't think it's going to do much. I think we'll deal with headsets before I don't know. I'm so far removed from the military stuff. I'm going to leave that to other experts to talk about. I am not even remotely aware of how that looks or is going. Um oh yeah, Noem's husband got outed for this bimbofication thing. I okay, so this face here, I am not shaming, I'm not kink shaming. I the man married Kirsty Noem. My sympathy does stop at a certain point because choices were made. I don't think they were the best choices. But as far as whatever he's doing on his own time, it seems like there's consent. It seems like it's something that he enjoys. I don't understand it. I don't understand a lot of things that ultimately make no difference in my world because it's not my thing. So I don't go there. It's fine. I feel bad for Here's what I feel bad for. I feel bad for him and I feel bad for how the backlash that he is going to receive. Um if the flashing keeps up, just for my own sake of mine, I am going to disappear and come back. I'm just going to refresh the stream if I need to. Hopefully it will stop in a minute. But if it keeps going by the end of news headlines, we will take a minute and I will fix it or try to fix it. So Christy Noem's husband, yeah, my my note guy says I'm way too vanilla for this regime. It's so true. Some of the things that I have to find a way to say with a straight face are kind of insane to me. Um, Other news that happened this week, TMZ apparently has turned all cameras on politicians. I'm here for that. I am absolutely here for that. I think sometimes we put too much on celebrities, and truly, I don't think the politicians get enough of that attention. And so I'm here for it. TMZ is like, you get a picture of these guys when they're not working, we want to see it. And there's already been some pictures. Lindsey Graham with the bubble wand. He got very defensive about it. So there's that. What the other thing that I did see that my petty self kind of loves was Trump thinking, it seems for a moment, that JD Vance looked like a picture that was done to make fun of JD Vance. And so we're kind of here for that. Um and I think that is and we are still at war. I did see earlier today that France managed to get a ship through the Strait of Hormuz. So things are afoot. And of course, it's the weekend, so more things are going to be afoot. What I am going to do at the moment, this keeps happening. The last time it happened like this, a reboot was able to fix it. So, guys, I am very sorry, but we are going to try. We are going to try. This might look old. This might be an old thing, but give me a moment. We're going to hope that I don't have to start a new stream, but 1 second. Let me see if I can make this happen. I'll be right back, guys. I will be right back. All right, let's see. Let's see if that worked. All right. All right. I should have faded that. I apologize, guys. All right, let's see if that fixed it. I hope that it did. I really hope that it did. Okay. Let us start. So, let's start with keywords with what happened with the Supreme Court, because we've all seen the headlines. The Supreme Court ruled against the ban on conversion therapy. I suppose I should start with what is conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is some really nice words for what is effectively torture. It basically is the notion that you can take typically young people under 18 who are gay or trans or non-binary, and you can, through therapy, generally abuse, retrain them to not have those feelings. There are 0, to my knowledge, legitimate psychological, scientific backed studies that show that this A works and B is even remotely healthy. Generally, it just causes trauma and it is a problem. And it is done out of religion. And I say that because there are a lot of things with the religions that tend to go with this where abuse is sanctioned and it's more for control and not actually based in faith or any of the books that they claim to be a part of their faith. So that's a little bit of a sidetrack, but that is the conversion therapy thing. If you are somebody who happens to think that the conversion therapy thing is good, I want you to look in the mirror and answer for yourself some questions. Legitimately, I really want you to take a moment with these questions. When did you actively choose your gender and your sexuality? Because for me, and literally everybody I know, it has always just been you just know. And that goes for gay, straight, trans, cis, non-binary, everybody I know. And yes, I do know people in every single one of those categories. So I just because I find that the people who say that it's a choice never had to think about what their lives were like, or they are so deep in the closet, even the dust bunnies have an easier way out. So I just want you to sit with that if you disagree with that. So we are starting from the premise that conversion therapy is bad, and from my perspective, should probably be banned. Now, as we start getting into the Supreme Court decision, this is where it gets tricky because we need to have better laws on the books that will allow this sort of a law to move forward. So that's the first thing. With what conversion therapy is and all of that. The next thing I want to look at is ruling versus remand. Not everything that gets to the Supreme Court do the justices decide on. Like with any appellate court, a lot of times you hit a certain point and they just kick the can back down to the lower court. The Supreme Court in this decision remanded the case back down to the lower circuits. What does that mean? Well, it means just about everybody wrote some sort of something, which, as I understand it, the appellate courts will end up using when they get the case back. But this case it was not to a point where it was decided by the Supreme Court. Supreme Court said effectively not enough information, back down to the lower courts. I am going to look at a couple of instances in the concurring opinion, which I find interesting. This is also a good point in the show to remind you that legality and morality are not always the same thing. As much as we would like them all to be the same thing, they are not always the same thing. And sometimes, unfortunately, we end up where something is legal and we hate it. And that is where I find myself on this one. I also want to compare this a little bit to, there are a lot of similarities between a few years back, Supreme Court ruling. That was with the Masterpiece Cake versus also Colorado, Masterpiece Cake Shop versus Colorado. Here are the similarities. Back up, Aurora. So here are the similarities between the two things. In both cases, Colorado passed a law with the aim to protect Colorado citizens. In both cases, either the law firm, and I couldn't remember if it was the same law firm or not, but either the law firm or the plaintiff had never encountered they'd never butted up against the law. The law affected them not at all, but they didn't like it. So they decided to sue to try and get the law to go away. That happened in both of these cases, right? So Masterpiece Cake said, hey, if a hypothetical gay couple comes into my bakery and wants me to make them a wedding cake, I want to be able to say no. And hypothetically, under this law, I can't say no. So they sued. That one, the case was ruled on. It was ordered by the court that particular law was unconstitutional. Private businesses could say no for basically any reason. Okay. On the surface, we were all big mad about that. Everybody in my world on the surface, we were all big mad about that ruling because that was Supreme Court said, that's it, done. We have decided. It is the law of the land. This can happen. And it could have gone very, very badly, and it still can. However, what we have seen happen more often is that in practice, now that has been ruled on and there is precedent, is that folks who, well, gay bakeries can look at some of these um, more bigoted minded people and say, nah, I'm not gonna make your wedding cake for that celebration or whatever it is that you're doing. Nope. And the people who wanted that first ruling, the people who were thrilled when the Masterpiece Cake Shop ruling came out, have been the ones on the wrong end of it a lot. So it's a dicey thing. I bring that in because there were so many similarities in the one that we are looking at today, Childs versus Salazar. Childs is a licensed therapist in Colorado who, when this law came out in Colorado, when this law was passed in Colorado, decided to sue, saying that this violated her First Amendment rights. Had she been affected by this law at all? No. Had anybody reprimanded her or anything? No. They just jumped the gun to try to bring this to the Supreme Court to try and get a ruling to protect conversion therapy, which is just a weird hill to die on for me. But that's basically what happened. There was no reprimand, there was no anything like that. So let us start by looking at the law. And then let us start by looking at some pieces of the Supreme Court decision. And because ultimately, with this particular case, the Supreme Court said, nope, we remand this back to the lower courts. They didn't decide on anything. They said it goes back to the lower courts. So there are probably going to be more hearings. It may go back to the Supreme Court. It may not. It may just end at the Circuit of Appeals that it got kicked back to. I cannot remember the number, or I would tell you. So let me move my notes. And this is a lot, and there's going to be a lot of me talking. So I appreciate everybody. Why do they change the buttons sometimes? They change the buttons at the weirdest times. Okay. Let us look first at the law. That's not the one I wanted. Hang on, guys. I need to see. Where is it? Nope, that's the... Where did it go? There it is. Okay. Sorry. I needed to find it. There it is. Okay. This is the law. Let me pull this. This is a summary. Let me can I embiggen? Aurora, what are we doing? Okay. And small and me embiggen this so that we can look at it. There. That's what I wanted to do. All right. So this is the summary. I'm not going to go into the full nitty-gritty details of this at the moment, but this is a summary of the law in question. Physicians, mental health care providers, conversion therapy for minors, prohibited disciplinary actions. So the act prohibits a licensed physician specializing in psychiatry or a licensed, certified, or registered mental health care provider from engaging in conversion therapy with a patient under 18 years of age. A licensee who engages in these practices is subject to disciplinary action by the appropriate licensing board. Conversion therapy means efforts to change an individual's sexual orientation, including efforts to change behaviors or gender expressions, or to eliminate or reduce sexual or romantic attractions or feelings towards individuals of the same sex. Yeah. So that is the law in question. So now let's go over to chat. Do we want to do law school first? Because I learned some new terms when I was listening to this, because the justices kept focusing on strict scrutiny versus intermediate scrutiny or rational basis, because that's the level at which the Supremes are looking at the suit and the legal matters before them. Courts, depending on where you are, so criminal court, right? Criminal court prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that their version of the case is correct. In civil court, it's greater weight of the evidence. So the party has to, so the winning party basically has to carry the greater weight of the evidence. That is, what's the phrase, 50% in a feather, or 51% versus 99%, right? So that's, and strict scrutiny, rational basis, intermediate scrutiny, all has to do with where does the burden fall? Does it fall on the petitioner? Does it fall on the state? And all of that. So we can do a little deeper dive on that if we want, but I think to start, let me clean this up, and then let's go look a little closer at, not that one. I did pull up the actual lawsuit. That is not the one I wanted. That's the one I wanted. All right, let's look at the ruling, because I love a good document here. So, because documents are great. We love the documents. No, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger, and we're going to take a look at this. So I am going to skip a whole bunch of what is first in here. This is the syllabus. We have 60 some odd pages to look at. And so we are, here's where things get important. These are the things you kind of want to scan for, right? As I understand them. Again, not a lawyer. If you are a lawyer, and especially if you're a constitutional law scholar and you need to correct me, by all means. This is as I understand it, being law adjacent. So when it says held, the Supreme Court is like, this is, we hold this to be true. So Colorado's law banning conversion therapy as applied to Ms. Childs's talk therapy regulates speech based on viewpoint, and the lower courts erred by failing to apply sufficiently rigorous First Amendment scrutiny. Translation as I understand it. Because she's only using words, now, they remove the fact that she's using words in a professional capacity, and that's where we get into the dissenting opinion, that because it was a law based on a viewpoint, a particular viewpoint, it was not a viewpoint neutral law. That's where all of this kind of falls apart for the Supremes. I am not even going to try and explain the why or the how of that, because I have no idea. I know that that is what they have said, that if it were written in a different way, the ruling probably would have been different. So, And they cite some case law as to why they go with that and all of those things. So I am skimming because this is, so then you get what they have held to be true, but then you get a lot of things like this, reversed and remanded. That means it gets back to the lower court. This opinion, so the reversed and remanded, for those pages of that, they want the lower courts to take a look at it and maybe fix it. So that is that's a big deal. So Gorsuch delivered the opinion of the court, Justice Roberts, and Justice Roberts, Thomas, Alito, Sotomayor, Kagan, Kavanaugh, and Barrett all joined in. Justice Kagan and Justice Sotomayor wrote the concurring opinion, I do believe. So, all right, this is the more legal summary of everything. And then we get into the opinion of the court. Ms. Childs is a mental health counselor in Colorado. In this case, we consider her First Amendment challenge to a state law regulating what she may say when speaking with her clients. And this is one where, as much as we might not like it, it does cut both ways. So that's where, as I read through this, I can see where they are coming from on their decisions. I don't like it. I think we need to do better. But legality and morality are not necessarily the same thing. So, things that they cited are, nor does she seek to impose her values or beliefs. That was a very strong argument. And I have to say, in the oral arguments, the state of Colorado did an absolutely maddeningly bad job of convincing me. Like, when I'm already on your side and the last 10 to 15 minutes of your argument have me wanting to throw my device across the room because you're not making the argument well. And believe me, I cannot even imagine how intimidating it is to go up against the Supremes and argue your case. But I could see where it was going in, like, not in that moment. I don't remember if I listened to it live or if I just went back and listened to it later, but the claims here are problematic, but on a legal side and what is on the paper, we know what's going on under the surface, but it is not clear in this letter of the law kind of thing. So it's very, very tricky. So let us skip on down to the end. So this is the initial opinion. I have linked the opinion. I've linked the oral arguments in the description of this video so that if you want to be a nerd like me and go read all 66 pages twice, by all means, go hop on down and go do that. So I recommend it because, I mean, everybody laughs at me like, oh, you're reading court documents for fun. Yeah. I'm a nerd. I am a nerd. So let's see. I'm almost where I want to be. They cite, it's worth it to read it. If we had more time and I wasn't trying to do a quick summary of this and all of that, we might go a little bit deeper. But for now, so let us get to, let's see, let's look at, I'm trying to find the highlights. Aurora, did you take notes like a normal person? No. Did I think I could remember it? Yes. Um, mhm. Okay. So among things, at bottom, Colorado and the dissent fundamentally misconceived this court's speech incident to conduct precedents. In these cases, the question is not whether a law mostly addresses conduct and only sometimes sweeps in speech. Instead, the focus lies on two entirely different questions: whether the law in question restricts speech only because it is integrally related to unlawful conduct, or whether the law restricts expressive conduct only for reasons unrelated to its content. So, with that, this court has held that strict scrutiny does not apply to regulations aimed at speech promoting the sale of contraband, because such speech is often bound up with traditional criminal content, and it goes on. Colorado's law does not regulate Aurora, highlight properly. Colorado's law does not regulate speech incident to conduct under either test. The state does not dictate what Ms. Childs may say because her speech bears a close casual connection to some separately unlawful conduct like traditional crime. So that is parsing out what is speech that can be regulated. As I understand it, this is parsing out what standard do we apply here if she is abiding by the consent of her patients and her patients alone. Is she causing problems? This is where it gets dicey because, again, that sword can cut both ways. So, getting down to I'll get there. There we go. The judgment of the 10th Circuit is reversed, and the case is remanded for further proceedings consistent with this opinion. It is so ordered. This is the key. This last little bit here, I'm going to embiggen myself before we get into the dissent. This is one of the things that, how did I come to this? Okay, so it is reversed. So the 10th Circuit, they basically said the 10th Circuit got it wrong as it stands now, but we, the Supremes, are not deciding this. Back to the 10th Circuit for further proceedings, further hearings, all of that. This is where what I would think. I'm trying to think of how to phrase this because my assumption is that if you are a really good attorney and your case went to the Supreme Court and it has now been remanded, so now you go back to court in the lower appeals courts and you are trying to figure out, do you get it back to the Supremes or do you readjust certain things? This is where the opinion of the Supremes can then help you rework, I would think, your legal argument because, and I think Colorado's lawyers should maybe do better. Like they have what they need. And Justice Jackson gave them some specifics that they did not focus on. And I think they should go back to that. But all the headlines, right? All of the headlines said, nope, the 10th what is it? 10th Circuit, it got reversed. Supreme Court decided conversion therapy is fine. That's not what they decided. That's not what they decided at all. In here, they talk about, does it meet a criminal standard? That's different. That's not speech. So, do we want it to get to that point? No, we don't. But when I see the headlines saying the Supreme Court decided this has been overturned, that part is true. So that's it. Conversion therapy is legal. That part is not true. That part is not true. Does it give, and those headlines give these law firms that try and get things to the Supreme Court to get these really backwards ideas pushed through. Ideas that are not based in science, not based in anything that we have come to learn about any of this, right? About sexuality, about gender. This case, so when it gets remanded, it means it might go back to the Supreme Court. What tipped me off as to this was not a ruling specifically, but a remand? Because Justice Sotomayor has talked about that a lot, that a lot of times what the Supremes do is they will listen, they'll take the oral arguments, they'll look at it, and they'll say, not enough info, and kick it back to the lower courts. That's a lot of what they end up doing. And so for me, my ticket to look deeper into this was when I heard it was an 8-1 decision. Okay, who was the one? Who dissented? Justice Jackson. Okay. So now I want to go look at, so that was my tip off to do deeper digging. And I encourage all of you to do the same thing. Supreme Court puts up all of their oral arguments. You can listen live. If you do listen live, be warned. If you are not used to this or you don't watch court as often as I do, the Supreme's job literally is just to poke holes in everybody's argument. So both sides get up, they make their initial argument, they say, we welcome your questions, and then they have to field the questions, and the questions are always based in trying to poke holes. Sometimes they'll signal where they're at, sometimes not so much. In this particular case, I think Justice Jackson did in fact signal very clearly where she was at, and she seemed to me to be trying to get the other justices on her side, and I don't think they were there. I don't know why, but I don't think they were there. I do think we need to do more with education on gender and sexuality. I really do. So I'm moving on to the dissenting opinion here. Let me pull this back up so that we can take a look at this. So Justice Jackson starts off with, there is no right to practice medicine, with a quote, there is no right to practice medicine which is not subordinate to the police power of the states. I think that's a pretty solid legal argument for her dissent, personally. This was true 100 years ago, and it should be true today. Many states have now chosen to exercise their police powers to ban conversion therapy based on the medical profession's broad consensus that this medical treatment, which seeks to treatment is such a strong word, which seeks to change a gay or transgender person's sexual orientation or gender identity, is ineffective and it is harmful. It is harmful. Every psychologist, like anybody who is in the profession of psychology that I have seen, that I have heard of, they come at this with, this is a harmful thing, in part because so much of conversion therapy is what we would also call aversion therapy, which is just a fancy way to say abuse. So, let us skip on down. She does not dispute. So we're coming down here talking about Kaylee Childs, who is a licensed counselor who works in the state of Colorado. Most of what Justice Jackson focuses on in her dissent is there are licensing boards, there are tests and requirements to be a licensed counselor in every state, whether you're, licenses like a medical license counseling license, psychiatry license, um, law license. Those are all things issued by each state, right? Um, and they are based on a set of ethics and standards. And when you get that, you have to adhere to the ethics and standards of that license. If you're a lawyer and you break the rules, you can be disbarred. If you are a doctor or a counselor and you break the rules, you can lose your license to practice. And so in this particular case, I have to say the law does not cover life coaches, which are not licensed in the same way. You can find great ones, you can find terrible ones. And I mean, Ms. Childs really could have just switched over to being a life coach and none of this would have been an issue, but that wasn't the point. The point was get this to the Supreme Court and get a win for anybody who wants to change somebody's gender or sexuality. Because that's what these guys are doing when they say you were born a boy, you better be a boy. You're asking somebody to change the gender that they are at home in, and that's not okay. It doesn't work out well for anybody. So let us go on down here. So this is she gets covers some things on healthcare providers, protection of the residents. So I respectfully dissent. Stated simply, the majority has failed to appreciate the crucial context in which Charles's constitutional claims have arisen. I agree. Charles is not speaking in the ether. She is providing therapy to minors as a licensed healthcare professional. The 10th Circuit was correct to observe that there is a long-standing history of states regulating the healthcare professions, and until today, the First Amendment has not blocked their way. For good reason. Under precedents, bedrock First Amendment principles have far less salience when the speakers are medical professionals and their treatment-related speech is being restricted incidentally to the state's regulation of the provision of medical care. No one directly disputes that Colorado has the power to regulate the medical treatments that state licensed professionals provide to patients, nor is it asserted that when doing so, a state always runs afoul of the Constitution. I think Justice Jackson has done a remarkably good job of pointing out the issues with the overall opinion above. Because I think so she points out Ms. Childs is a licensed medical professional. She's licensed. She has to adhere to a completely different set of values, the standards, right? In order to get that license, in order to maintain that license, there are a whole lot of things that she has to adhere to. And truly, I wonder if she is in a place to be a licensed counselor, because as a licensed counselor, she should understand that she should understand this. Not only is conversion therapy ineffective, former participants of conversion therapy report that it causes lasting psychological harm, which is a problem in any profession where you have that much care of another human being. Gay and transgender children who underwent non-aversive conversion therapy say they were taught to feel shame and self-hatred, none of which children should be feeling, in my own personal opinion. See brief for Conversion Therapy Survivor Network. And survivors of conversion therapy continue to suffer from PTSD, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. As one survivor put it, conversion therapy came close to killing me. That's not a therapy. That's a problem. So here's my thinking. So Justice Jackson dissented. That is the quickest TLDR of the two. This is a niggly case. There are a lot of nuances of the law that come into this. Where you can get hope, and where I want to encourage everybody who hangs out with us, everybody who hangs out with me, everybody who comes into this channel, I encourage all of us. You don't have to read all these things the way I do. Absolutely not. But what I would encourage all of us to do is take a look at when things like this happen, take a look at how is the media presenting it, and find the markers for times when maybe you need to look up a little more information. Maybe you need to do a little deeper digging. If uh, if Supreme Court issues a unanimous decision that you're mad about with this particular set of Supremes, the TikTok ruling, I would say take a closer look at how the law is written or what the petition is, because what you will find a lot of times is that the headlines oversimplify it, which it is they need to do that, right? It's a headline. The headline is absolutely oversimplifying things. We do it here on YouTube, you do it on TikTok, you do it for the New York Times. It's all the same, right? The headline is there to go to catch our attention and make us go, "Oh, what's that?" Also, laws can be tricky, and the Supreme Court is the highest law that is the highest court in the land. So when they do decide on something, Dobbs, you're stuck with it for a while. What tipped me off here was the 8-1. That was weird. That was weird. And anytime I see something weird and then I see the same headline across everything, PBS to Fox News, same kind of headline. And I went, I feel like that's not right. And so I did some digging. And this is where I got into is we can take a breath, but what we can also now do, what we also know we need to do now, 8 of the 9 justices have an issue with specifically the viewpoint of how this law is written. So if you're in Colorado, what I would say is contact your lawmakers and see, can you get a law on the books that still protects kids and still bans conversion therapy, but maybe is written in a more neutral way. I don't know, but I would look at that. I read this law as being pretty neutral, but those arguments, man, neutral was not how it was coming across. However, I think they also needed to bring in more of the evidence, which they did not bring in. So more evidence is needed. That is a remand. Remand basically says not enough information. Please back down to what, 10, the 10th Circuit, get us more information. So that's where we're at now. It does help the side of people who are pro-conversion therapy if you assume that that's it. The goal from those headlines, the goal from all of those things is for everybody to assume that the fight is over. Fight is not over. Conversion therapy causes harm. It should not even be called a therapy. We need to do better. The fight is not over. The Supreme Court didn't say banning conversion therapy is fine. They said they needed more information. And in all of the opinions, they have given the lawyers what they need, both sides, to go back to the 10th Circuit or whichever circuit it's going back to and shore up their argument. I don't know what anybody's going to decide to do. Let me know in the comments if you want me to continue to chase this down. I know it is very near and dear to my heart because I worry about kids who get caught up in that. I think it should not exist. I think we should do better I think we need to do more to protect our kids. That's a personal thing. And I think we need to be better about how we talk about gender and sexuality and stuff like that because it's not a choice. We know it's not a choice. We've known that for a very long time. I am sad that we lost a lot of information in World War II with society does that, right? We get a lot of information and then some group comes along and gets afraid of the information and then they burn the information. Then we have to relearn the information all over again. So I think we all need to have more nuanced conversations. And again, when it comes to something like this, when it comes to Supreme Court, I want you to look, is it a remand or is it a ruling? What are we looking at? Because if it's remanded, it's going back to the lower courts for further review. So we want to always look for that before we jump to certain conclusions. That's a lot. That is, I want to thank all of you. Actually, I should swoop. I should swoop before we go and go along that way. Which swoop? This one. I want to thank everybody, one, for switching up your time with me today. If you like the later afternoon, mid-afternoon hangout, or if you would prefer Saturday mornings, anyway, let me know. Saturday is the day I can do it. Let me know if you want me to change up the time. I am happy to look at that. Let me know if you want me to let me know in the comments if you want me to keep chasing this down and following this. I am curious. I might do it on my own. I might not. Feel free to also send me anything like this that you're like, does this look like what is this what it appears to be? I'm not an attorney. I'm law adjacent. If it's billing questions, I got you. The rest of it, I'm just a nerd and I just chase things down. So let me know. I know birthright citizenship was just delivered on oral arguments. Let me know if you want me to go over the ruling on that one when the ruling comes down. And we can go piece by piece on that one. That one I might look at much closer. So let me know how you're feeling there. It's going to be probably at least a month or so before we hear about that. Oral arguments have already been done. So maybe we can do a show where we go over the oral arguments. Anyway, let me know. I have forgotten entirely. You've been with me for an hour and I've forgotten entirely to say, if you're new here, hi, I'm Aurora. Welcome. We meet every Saturday, and if you like what you see, do the YouTubey things. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, share with your friends. We are working on building a wonderful community over here where kindness is what we lead with, and we take the time to take a deep breath and have nuanced conversations about things like this Charles versus Salazar Supreme Court thing. Big news coming up this week, I'm sure. I hope everybody who is celebrating Easter has a fantastic day tomorrow. Passover and Easter are always kind of odd holidays where I'm never quite sure how to happy Easter, happy Passover. It's a little funky on that end. So anyway, if you like hanging with me, you can always find me on Threads. You can find me on Instagram. That's where I post most often. That's where you get some of my snarkier self. I apologize. I have a rogue hair, and it's either animal glitter or it's like a single hair. So I apologize. But yes, it is. So I'm on Threads. I am on Instagram the most when I am not here. I'm doing my level best to get those shorts up for you. You should see some clips from this show up later tonight. Timestamps, I'm sorry, they give me hives. I'll get there eventually, I promise. Link to the oral arguments, link to the decision for this particular case are in the description of this video. I think that is everything. You guys have been amazing. I'm glad. Mom says great explanation of everything. I hope if you are a lawyer, especially if you are a constitutional law scholar, please. Like I have to know if my law nerd university degree paid off. Totally made up thing. It does not exist. It exists in my mind. But if I've paid attention to all of the right things and my nerdiness led me to all of the right things, I feel very confident in everything I'm saying. I feel very confident in everything I looked up. Also, not an attorney. So I'm really curious. If you are an attorney or have an attorney friend, please put me on 1.5 speed. I want to know what their opinions are of this. I'm very curious. So anyway, that's a selfish thing on my part. You guys have been great. Thank you for hanging with me. Go enjoy the rest of your holiday weekend if you are celebrating. And I will see. Also, yes, reminder, let me know if the time works for you. Yep, that's it. I'm going to go have my coffee and hang with the dogs. You guys have a wonderful rest of your weekend. I will see you next week. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Bark a Lot. Follow me on Threads and Insta at the Aurora H. White. That's where I post most frequently between shows. Hit that like button, connect with us, and remember to bark a lot. We will see you next time.